Tony, you and I could start a ball company tomorrow, right?
Let's call it the FOCO Ball Company.
FOCO Balls.
Ted's Balls.
I like Ted's because you have the jingle. You got the video already ready to go. But you and I could order. We could do this tomorrow. Put our logo on it, and away we go. And like I said, it's starting to feel a little bit like the deodorant aisle to me, where you go down and I'm like, do we really need 312 different scents or flavors or whatever of deodorant?
You're doing it wrong, man.
I disagree. What is up, everybody? How you living? No putts given. We're back. Tony Covey, Golf Spy T, Chris Nickel, Golf Spy C. A little bit of a hiatus there, Tony, but
we've been gone 2 out of the last 4. Yeah. Why don't you share with everybody what you've been up to?
I was gonna say this feels a little like my Friday afternoon art history class in college, where I think attendance was about 50%. About every other is pretty good. I had a little hospitalization issue, little thing called a pericardial effusion into cardiac tamponade, which is basically
many words. None of them sound great.
They're not. Basically, you get a lot of fluid inside the pericardium, the sac that holds your heart. It's supposed to hold about 50 cc's fluid. I had a little over 1.2 liters of fluid.
So that's a conversion I can't do, but it sounds like a lot.
About 25 times. Like you think about 50 cc's is just like a little shot glass full, and a liter. Imagine a 2 liter a pop. Take a little more than half of that and jam it all into that space, and it's not good. It's not good. So, but good news, they were able to drain it all through medical current. Modern medical stuff is really, really amazing. Very, very thankful to be on this side of it, and we are convalescing and back exactly where I want to be, back in the golfus. So here we are.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Woohoo! So you do anything exciting, Tony?
I hung stuff on the walls. That's how I spent the good bit of my weekend.
I love it. So a couple topics for the good people today. The catch-22, Tony, of tour players, the equipment they use, and why the hell do we care so much? Should we care more? Should we care less? We're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about a little ball lab. We've got a highly requested ball from Encore that you dug into, and then I might have a mailbag question or two for you, Tony. So does that work for you?
Yeah. Let us get it.
Let us get in. So see, what had happened was this is kind of where it all started. Last weekend, we don't cover the tour a lot. We don't dive into that a whole bunch, but I've been basically sitting around doing nothing but watching TV and trying to keep my mind occupied. But a couple interesting things, right? Rory kind of sort of threw Taylormade under the bus a little bit, kind of saying, I'm going to give him a pass, but we'll get to that. Had been using Stealth 2 since Genesis, I believe, since Tiger outdrove him in round 1, and he's kind of like, hey, enough of that nonsense. He intimated that he would prefer to be playing last year's version, Stealth 1. Colin Morikawa went a step further and kind of moved away from Stealth 2 and went back several generations now to that old technology of titanium and using the sim driver. And it got us kind of thinking, what's the deal, Tony? Why are tour players doing this? Why should we care? There's a couple different ways to frame this conversation, but what's your first response, I guess?
What a roller coaster for Taylormade, right? It's like Rory kind of dreaming of Stealth 1, Morikawa back to an original sim, and then Scheffler says the hell with all of it and wins with a Stealth 2 anyway. So,
right.
Yeah, quite the ride. Yeah, I think largely, I want to say much ado about nothing. I think it probably speaks a little bit to the psychology of a tour pro, the mindset, and maybe how they're not too much different than we are in some respects, we being average weekend hacks. So that's a piece of it, and I think probably something to be said about release cycles, and maybe between the lines, if tour pros, Rory being one of them, wish that maybe they weren't quite as accelerated as they are.
Yeah, and I want to follow up with another question too. But the first thing, and here's why I'm giving Rory a pass on this one, I think, and Colin too, for that matter, is these are players are constantly searching for performance, right, and trying to figure out, hey, what works, why does it work, how does it work, and as we've seen throughout our testing, right, there isn't a single best club that's best for everybody, even if that company happens to pay you money to play said club, right? It doesn't automatically mean that it's the optimal club for you. Now, you can't just do the whole baby and bathwater thing and say, geez, if that's the case, I saw somebody comment, well, how did Stealth 2 win, most wanted driver this year if it's not even good enough for Rory to play it? Well, apples and oranges, right? I mean, those are entirely different scenarios. And, obviously Rory is searching for some things in his game right now. Colin probably say the same thing about him. And so you have players that are looking and evaluating. It's still early, relatively speaking, in the year, right? And trying to optimize and figure out what's going on. And so I give him a pass on that part of it. But what I guess go back to the last thing you kind of said, what does this kind of tell us about the product cycle nature of the industry? And do you think pros would prefer if they said, hey, everything's going to be on a minimum of a 2-year cycle?
I think for the most part you'd see the tour guys much happier, and it's not everyone. Titleist is on a 2-year cycle. Ping runs typically 18 months, sometimes a bit longer, and then you have to throw in what happens over in Asia and Australia and what those cycles are relative to ours. It's a little
Right.
bit chaotic there, but yeah, I mean, look, there have been grumblings, sort of these things you hear in the background, some rumors that Rory in particular does not like the frequent being annual
Right.
equipment changes. I think he's a guy that would be much happier if he knew that he was going to be able to play the same model for 2 years. And yeah, we can talk about the CT creep issue and how that plays into all of that. But I think by and large, a lot of tour players would probably be happier with longer cycles, not having to change a driver every year if you're a Taylormade guy or a Callaway guy. And I know some of these will get pushed back from the brand and say, look, our contracts are written so that they don't have to change. But I think we know that brands want these guys in the new stuff. It's beneficial to have them in the new stuff. I think arguably when we talk about Rory wanting to play an original Stealth, Colin going all the way back to a sim, it hurts brands when a tour guy does not play the latest thing, because again, then you get the kind of stuff we're seeing online right now where it's like, oh, it must not be as good because Rory doesn't want to play it. Yeah, because it's not as good for one guy or two guys. When, look, the reality of this, I've said this countless times, there's nothing I've seen. I'll leave the door open, but nothing I've seen from a generational improvement standpoint where you can say, yes, this driver, for example, is 100% better for everybody, or quantifiably better for 100% of golfers. That piece of equipment doesn't exist. It's, some people it's going to be better, others worse. A lot of guys fundamentally the same, because we talk about it a lot of times. It's just let's hey, we're going to try a different center of gravity position this year because we think this is going to work better. And for
Right.
some guys it does, for some it doesn't. So there's a comfort level, and a lot of times, and I think this is speculation, but I think a lot of when Rory talks about getting it right with the Stealth 2 and how difficult that's been, it's probably a lot of playing with weights and hot melt and things like that to get the Stealth 2 to play just like his Stealth did.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Well, and even
that's the
Rory,
game.
yeah, and
That's the
Rory
game.
admits in there very clearly too, hey, there's a lot of user error involved here. And this, again, why I give him some of a pass, and it's not at all similar to other situations where we've seen players throw OEMs, just directly under the bus and maybe even back up over them a couple times, like, hey, you can't make me what I need. That's not the case at all.
I
But
don't think there was anybody going, driver sucks.
right, not even close to that situation.
Bring me a protein shake.
Two of them. But the reality is, yeah, golf manufacturers want players in the product that they can actually sell, right? That makes sense. And not for nothing, right? If this wasn't Rory, we wouldn't even be talking about it, right? If it were somebody who was 250th in the world or somebody, um, probably wouldn't get that same level of attention. But Rory is such a flagship player for not just TaylorMade, but kind of for the PGA Tour right now as well, given all of those things that are going on. So, he's in the spotlight a little bit more. So, what does that mean for for a TaylorMade or any other company for that matter when your flagship player, the one that you're probably paying the most or close to it, says, basically, I don't think that the current product is the one that I would choose to be playing. I'd rather go back to one that you guys can't really sell so much, or that commercial that you see every 28 seconds that I just said, hey, this one is the best. Yeah, I didn't really mean that.
Well, that's the double edged sword of tour player endorsements, right? Like you can win with them big time when again, Scotty Scheffler won with a Stealth 2 driver in the bag. Obviously worked good enough for him.
Yeah, just fine, I think,
And
right?
so Rory's not dialed in today, and that's part of it, right? Things change, players evolve even from week to week, and so it's certainly it's never a good look when a guy like Rory kind of mentions that maybe he'd be happier in a prior gen, or when somebody like Morikawa goes all the way back to a sim. And it kind of reminds me, so several years ago, and this actually, as it turns out, coincidentally was a TaylorMade staffer. I think this was like Rocket Balls era.
Okay.
So a TaylorMade, I couldn't even tell you which guy it was, but I don't even think it was one of the big names, but a TaylorMade staffer won a tournament. And see it less now, but back then, like if a guy won like by if the final putt dropped at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening, by 6:03 there'd be an email detailing the win and all the equipment that was used. And
Right.
I happened to look at it and I noticed the fairway wood was missing. I mean, he was playing a TaylorMade fairway wood, but it was an old model. And I was like, hey man, how come you didn't mention the fairway wood? He's like, yeah, we're really not in the business of advertising 5-year-old fairway woods. And so it's a similar thing. Like it's you don't win at retail when the guys are playing the old stuff,
Right.
because it does give. And sometimes it's again because people don't want to think too deeply about these things, but it gives the impression that, oh well, if he won with the older one, it must mean that the new one isn't as good. Couldn't possibly be that, well, the older one just happens to fit that one guy better, or that one guy is for whatever reason just really comfortable with it and doesn't want to switch out of it. Any number of reasons beyond driver sucks.
Right. How much of this issue is driver specific? And I guess what I mean by that is, like, I'm looking at Scheffler stats from obviously this last weekend, and he kind of lapped the field, certainly on the weekend, but overall he gained 4.32 strokes over the entire event. He was positive in every area, barely positive in strokes gained putting. He was like plus 0.2, so basically field average, but off the tee, around the greens, total tee to green, gained more than 4 strokes over the course of the tournament against the field, and obviously had the best strokes gained metrics, for the entire week. So, but I don't hear people going, "Oh my gosh, look, he plays muscle back irons," or he had two, Scheffler again. He had two Titleist SM8 wedges. Those are a generation old. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that he had two Titleist SM8 wedges in the bag, or an iron design that is fundamentally unchanged, right, over the last decade plus. Don't care. But the driver,
It's the visible one, right? It's the most visible club in the bag. It's the one that, I mean, we've talked about companies actually creating paint schemes and
right?
aesthetics that pop more on TV. It's part of the reason why the TaylorMade face is more red this year, a deeper red than it was last year. It's
Mm-hmm.
that much more visible. So I think there's an acknowledgement industry wide. The golf companies know it. I think golfers, for whatever reason, pay more attention to it. And I think the fact that we we get such detailed stats, especially on the drive. They're readily available, right? You get the shot tracer, everything. It's not that we don't see other shots, but again, it's that the driver is the one that seems relatable. Everybody understands distance and what it means, and the launch parameters, all that stuff. It's just so completely in your face, nonstop. So I think it is the most important club from a visibility standpoint. And I think when you consider the trickle down effects of if you buy a driver, do you buy let's say a Stealth 2, right? If you buy a Stealth 2 driver, do you buy that awesome Stealth 2 plus fairway wood that I think so highly of? Do you consider a Stealth hybrid if you're a hybrid guy, or maybe it's a Taylormade utility iron? And it's all that, I think so much trickles down from the driver that, and again, it's, in every respect, golf companies want it to be the most visible. It is the most visible on TV, and I think it drives so much of everything else. And wedges, yeah, I think you're right. Like, nobody notices for the most part. Nobody cares.
But when you look at it,
too bad for Titleist, I guess, in this particular case. But
you look at it from a strokes gain perspective for what he did this week, super, super important, right? And so it's just, I think you're right. I mean, there's the driver and then all the permutations of driver leads and probably leads to these other sales and things. And like I said, even more of a reason that companies want to have their best players playing, and preferably playing well, right, with the products that they can actually sell. Like I said, we're not in the business of selling 5-year-old fairway woods.
Well, he won with a Titleist golf ball. And so I've seen that comment too. Well, it just shows you how much better the Titleist is than the TaylorMade. Look, I'm as deep into the weeds on golf balls as anyone. I will tell you, they're just very different golf balls. And so with that, accepting that they are very different in how they perform, my guess is he chose the one that performed best for him from what was available to him. It's simple.
Yeah. No, it's just one of those things. It makes me wonder if again, this world of equipment deals and how companies structure some of these things is, going to continue to evolve, based on some of that stuff. But it really does underscore just the importance of, I think we are still in a driver led industry in that regard, especially the big dogs. Any final thoughts on that, Tony? That's deep stuff, man.
Yeah, I as a connoisseur of golf, or somebody who looks to the tour for guidance, this is a clear case of I really wouldn't want to read too much into this, because I don't think there's any particular insight to be gleaned.
No, I think in general people probably try to read into those things far too much. There's, you got to play what's best for you. You are not a tour player. At most, it's entertaining. At worst, use it as a guide to try to make decisions for yourself. But, really, it's a fair amount of entertainment. And there's every once in a while, maybe there's something interesting you can take from a player's bag. But just food for thought, Tony. Which I'm always a fan of food. So, Ball Lab. What do we got in the hopper this week, Tony? Talk to me.
Yeah, as this podcast will publish on Wednesday, and as will our test of the 2022 Encore Elixir, which is one that we get asked quite a bit about. It's a Encore. I'd say a fairly popular DTC brand. I don't know that it's the leader. I think maybe Snell, when they have inventory, or Vice would probably be the top dog. But Encore has a following. Mm-hmm. Always interesting, and this one proved particularly there we go, interesting. And I was curious about this. For the big reason for me is, this is so weird because they still sell the 2020, I think,
2019,
20. I don't know. It's
whatever it was, previous version.
Yeah, of the Elixir, still available. 3-piece ball, foremost made cast urethane cover. Here comes the new Elixir, still 3-piece, injection molded, and we have every reason to believe it's made by Launch Tech, also in Taiwan. But fundamentally different technologies in the cover, different dimple patterns. So you go from the 318, the stock, the legendary foremost, to to the 350. That's your tell if you want to kind of comb the list, the USGA list, and find balls that may be similar. Dimple patterns are a good place to start, and then go from there. Once you have a dimple pattern in a country of origin, you usually have the factory.
Yep.
So curious to look at it anyway.
So
And
before you go into that, launch tech. So reasonable to think they're made at launch tech in terms of DTC facilities. So offshore third party manufacturers. So it's like, Titleist makes their own balls, Callaway, etc. Not that stuff. If you and I start a ball company and we need to source our product from overseas, where would you rank launch tech just in general? Where would you kind of put them?
yeah, first I would go to foremost first, and this is
Yep.
this is based on what we see in ball lab, and we're starting to get. I mean, we have a ton of data now on balls, and starting to understand quality at the factory level. I think Launch Technologies has become the number two in that space, with Nassau Korea, or now Taylormade Korea,
Yeah.
effectively being out of the DTC game. So I think they're number two. I don't think they're necessarily a really close number two, but number two.
Okay.
They do, and they do a good bit of OEM business, more of it in the ionomer space,
Mm-hmm.
and but they have kind of become the go to of late for DTC brands, especially again as I mentioned, Nassau being sold to TaylorMade, becoming or TaylorMade Korea. You have Foremost that is, I would say, is about at capacity as I understand it. Again, they do a fair amount for TaylorMade, so some of the TP5 stuff comes from there as is. They make the Max Fly, they make the Wilson stuff, some of the Vice stuff, as I mentioned, the previous Elixir, the Vero X1 and X2. So a lot of quality balls coming out of Encore, and so I think as capacity has been an issue there, Launch Tech has kind of become the go to for
Overflow a little
next on
bit,
the
right?
list. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Just the reality of it. So okay. So maybe not the prime choice, but kind of the next layer down, and we're seeing that for a variety of reasons. Um, how'd it go? What'd you see?
So yeah, this again,
What
this
what
everything
happened?
about this is kind of amazing. So, um, I would say so. The final score, quality score 78, so 5 points above the database average. Call it a
Okay.
C plus, trending towards a B minus. And I know C plus sounds bad, but look, like C is average on our scale.
Right.
Low 70s. That's where things shake out on our distribution curves. That's just how it is. So C plus, I would consider that good. Typically, if I see a C plus, that's like I would have no quality reservations about it. Like, yeah, can I
Mm-hmm.
find a higher quality ball? Absolutely. Is it anywhere near the worst? No, it's not a bad ball by any means. So it actually, and we saw for one metric, I want to say for weight, it was actually above average, so into the good range for there. Average for compression, average for diameter. Uh, Three bad balls for what we call concentricity defects, just really really thin spots in the mantle, which does happen.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more were close, but we let them through, kind of right on the edge, and we always give the ball the benefit of the doubt. So I would describe it as a soft 78, but a 78 nonetheless.
Okay.
So overall, pretty decent results.
Is it a
But
ball that if your buddy was playing it, would you try to talk them out of it? Say, hey, I I think there's something better out there for you. Like, where is that line for you where you're like, you see somebody playing a ball and you're like, man, for what
well, it
you're
depends who
spending,
it. Yeah, I
there's a
mean,
better option there.
there is a value play here, and I think at that price point, it is acceptable quality. I have no qualms about it. It's not the kind of thing where, and the compression measures at 84 too, so it's kind of right on
Okay.
that leading edge of the tour range. It's a little softer than most of what gets played on tour. Like it's Strixon. We haven't checked the newest model yet, but the prior gen Z Star was kind of in that low 80 space. 84 is kind of around where the Tour BXS hovers.
Yep.
So soft by tour standards, but not like, oh my god, you're killing
You're
yourself
giving
with this
up.
compression. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
it's not that level. So yeah, it's not one where I would roll my eyes and shake my head and or anything like that by any stretch. But
But
let's refresh.
let's refresh.
Encore
Encore,
Elixir. Says
Elixir.
Elixir right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I think I know what you're going to show me, Tony.
Elixir says
Elixir.
symbol. All right, there's your
Yep.
Encore logo.
Yep.
I just heard Alexa say she wasn't sure, which
Yep.
kind of
Alexa's
sums up.
if Alexa doesn't know what the hell's going on, what chance
sure.
do we have? So what?
I'm
Okay,
not sure.
I'm not colorblind. I'm seeing two different color cores there, Tony.
And we didn't do this on purpose, but this is almost like a little bit like my shirt and a little bit like yours.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
a good
how
point.
about that? A little bit.
All right, so at first blush, like you look at it and go, oh my gosh, it's two different color cores. Sky's falling. What's
so
going
we got
on?
30. So we sample 3 dozen. 34 of those, 2 of these.
So 2 yellow snuck into the otherwise 34 kind of reddish pink ones. What happened? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's $1 million question. So,
see, what had happened was,
yeah. I mean, this again. It's it's a mystery. It's a curiosity. So I didn't flag them as bad initially. I was like, let's see where these fall, and it turns out that laid out on the charts. These will be, you'll see in our actual review, the ball lab test. We publish a chart that shows you ball by ball the metrics, and you would not be able to pick these out of that particular lineup.
Okay.
So on one hand, hey,
irrelevant,
nothing,
maybe.
Yeah, nothing to worry about. And depending, like, it's not unusual. There's always some variation in color. Not always, but like Titleist does a whole lot of gradient matching and jumps through hoops just so that the balls are really consistent in color.
Right.
Not everybody is that concerned about color because it's really the composition, right? Chemically, are these the same?
Right.
And pigmentation is a little bit less of an issue there. But to see this type of variation, right? Like I would expect lighter red, darker red, that kind of thing. This is obviously no shade of red.
So what in your opinion, what would cause something like if you're the manufacturer or if you're that, like, I see how they're two different, but as a consumer, does it make any difference to me, or should I be at all concerned about that?
Yeah, again, so they came out similarly, right? I couldn't tell you, I can't point to any metric and go, see, there's the difference. Did maybe somehow Launch Tech just forget to put the pigment into one batch? Although it's interesting, like I said, 2 of these in 36 balls. So and they were in different dozens, and those dozens were purchased several months apart.
Right.
So it's not, it's unlikely that this was the result of a single bad batch. This seems to be kind of like every now and then one of these trickles in.
Right.
And so is it, hey, we forgot to color the mix. I don't have any good answers, but I mean, this is the kind of thing where if I'm Encore, it's worth kind of a WTF phone call to the factory and go, guys, it's not cool. It's not supposed to happen.
Yeah,
so, like I said, on one hand, it looks really bad. On the gauges, it's no big deal, except that, if these are different,
right, they're not the same,
really similar, then hey, what's going on? Are we just repigmenting balls for our DTC customers? Because that's another thing that's worth pointing out. And we've heard about this from the guys overseas. And I have a ball contact, works out of Asia, and knows what's going on at the factories, and he's told me, like, as factories have become more and more aware of mygolfspy, and it's not just us, right? Seeing lots of people cut open golf balls now.
Yeah, they
have once upon a time everything. And remember back to when Titleist sued the DTC brands several years ago, and you cut those like 14 different companies. I forget what it was, but
there was a laundry list.
Yeah, and every one of those balls, when you cut them open, all look the same on the inside. Well, as the factories have become aware of the cutting that is going on out in the world, they've started to basically change pigments based on the logo. Composition, same. Logo, pigment, different. So again, so that it sort of makes it look like there's more variety in the DTC space than there actually is. Now, Encore has always said that their ball is proprietary. Their big talking point is the kind of the perimeter weighted higher MOI design. So it'll be interesting. I don't think we were going to test the sugar in our ball test. It was just, the gauge measurements were so bad
Right.
that we're like, I don't know.
Right.
But now I think we have to take a look, and the last kind of thing that I would mention is, and you've been in on these conversations, that we've talked to more than one small brand that says, oh yeah, sometimes quality can be a problem, but we pay for a higher standard of quality control, so that doesn't happen
Right.
to us. And so I don't know if that's a story that Encore specifically tells. I haven't talked to them about that particular piece of things, but like I said, if I find this in a box of these, regardless of whether or not they measure out the same, and again, whether they're supposed to be the same or not is a whole other
Right.
question.
Right.
Yeah, I'm making a phone call.
Which gets me to we're seeing this more kind of this year and in the last year and a half too. I think the DTC world of golf balls, again, we're talking direct to consumer balls that are largely manufactured overseas, where Tony, you and I could start a ball company tomorrow, right?
Yes.
In fact, I believe you have
Let's
a
call it the
jingle.
Foco Ball Company.
Foco balls, yeah.
Or
But
Ted's.
you,
It's just
yeah.
Ted's balls.
I like Ted's because you have the jingle. You got the video already ready to go. But you and I could order. We could do this tomorrow, and so could anybody else if they could. Right? They can order off the menu. Say, hey, I want a 3-piece ball. Yep, yeah, the 350 dimple pattern's good. Da 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 da. Put our logo on it, and away we go. And like I said, it's starting to feel a little bit like the deodorant aisle to me, where you go down, and I'm like, do we really need 312 different scents or flavors or whatever of deodorant? Like,
If
at
you're
what
tasting it, you're doing it wrong, man.
I disagree, but it's like, at what point in time have we oversaturated? Where it's like, do we really need 13 different versions of the same ball with just a different logo on it,
And a different
or
story slightly. And
and it's
even that, like the
like,
stories are becoming similar, right?
right,
We're just two guys or a group of friends that wanted to make a better ball at an affordable price. And it's, you can find some version of that in legitimately 7, 8 different places.
mm-hmm.
And you get some of them actually bother to submit the ball to the USGA and get
Right.
it on the list, and then others use the phrase conforms to USGA rules. Like, yeah, we
It's
know that it's conforming. And this is one of the things I love. I actually appreciated this.
like,
Like, we've had this conversation, or Barba has, with the Penfold guys. Like, they
right.
make no secret about it. Like, yeah,
No, they don't
it's
care.
just a straight off the menu. We put the Penfold logo on it because
We
people
think
still
you might like it.
that resonates with people. We didn't submit it to the USGA. It's not on the list, but you know what? Other people have put this same ball on the list, and I love it because it's like it's the most authentic, I feel like, just about that any DCC brand has ever been with us. They're like,
I
we're in it for the lifestyle angle, and that's that. And
I
that's
feel like it bodes another either kind of T-shirt or poster idea, Tony, where you could go through and just, these balls are all sufficiently similar, right? Like, if you had a family tree, kind of, okay, here's the Nassau tree and the Foremost tree and the Launch Tech tree, and okay, if you're playing one of these 17 balls, they're all uniformly similar. Or hey, the Max Fly is basically the top level version of this particular lineage or chain, right? Where it's like, people who want to say, hey, if you're playing a sugar ball or you're playing this, these 7, 8, 9 balls are all fundamentally the same damn golf ball, just with maybe a slightly different story. I mean, isn't that
or
kind
I
of where
mean,
we're at? And
tweak it's and you gotta like understand everything kind of trickles almost, whether it trickles from the inside out or the outside in. So we've got a 350 dimple cover, right?
right,
That tooling is set. They're
done,
not going to retool to make this cover for a different ball because
right,
molds for covers are super duper expensive.
right,
So all right, so that's a certain thickness, and now like if you've got a target thickness to hit, that mandates where the next two layers are going to be. And hey, maybe we've only got one set of tooling for our mantle layer, and the next thing you know, right, you've already defined the measurements, the diameter of every layer in the golf ball. And because
there's
again,
only so much
like
you can do then.
if you
Then you're
can,
kind of
that's how you keep costs down, is you don't have exorbitant tooling costs. That's one way to do it. And so yeah,
right.
that you do end up with a lot of similarities in that respect. And yeah, you can maybe tweak the core composition a little bit, maybe add a little something to the mantle, whatever it happens to be. But you are in the DT space to a degree restricted in what you're going to do, because as soon as you say, oh no, I want to do something completely different, well, somebody's got to pay for that tooling. And at
Right.
that point, now you're getting into a space where DTC price points maybe aren't achievable if you do that. That's kind of what separates the whole white label DTC business from,
Mainline
we're
OEM
gonna
kind of, yeah.
yeah, we're gonna design every aspect of this ball in house and
Yep.
produce it in house, and with that, eat
Yeah.
every bit of the cost that comes with that.
Yeah, I just, yeah, it's an interesting space, and I feel like we've seen more of an influx after COVID, with more and more ball brands popping up, this one and that one and this one, and it's like, man, do we really need 34 DTC brands? Can't we really? Does the market only need like maybe four or
Well, and I
five?
mean, honest,
But
I think if you get into it, there are 4 or 5 maybe established players that we've tested and found good quality with. So
mm-hmm,
Snell, Encore, you said, no issue with
yeah,
the Encore ball for the most part. Really liked what I've seen both in
yep,
performance testing and on the gauges. We know Vice sells well.
yep.
And so those, I mean, I got to
Max
think
Fly, probably have to
Max
put Max
Fly. Yeah.
Fly.
And again, that's when people
I
argue
know.
whether or not that's
Yeah,
DTC, right? And you're kind of getting into that space with
or
people. We don't
whatever.
know
But
too
yeah,
much about that other than, what we were able to dissect, but we haven't measured any yet, haven't robot tested them yet. But I could see that very quickly kind of stepping in and filling into that space and being, one of
mm-hmm,
the top 5 brands in that category. And then, at some point, like, what are you really fighting for? Like, what's it? What are the scraps worth? I don't
right.
know.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Consumer
that's,
decides. I don't get
yeah.
to
No,
say.
consumer decides, but
I don't get to boot anybody off the island,
but if
for
we
better
had
or
like
worse.
tier 1, 2, 3, 4, you can almost see a situation where after we have enough information, we say, hey, this is that top tier of DTC balls. Maybe it is Vice, Snell, Encore, Max Fly, whatever. And then maybe here's the second tier, and then here's the don't bother tier, because it's just a repeat of
Well, yeah.
this.
Once you get into that semantic difference between USGA conforming and conforms to USGA rules, then you kind of know. Like, if a brand cannot be bothered to submit the ball to the USGA, I mean, that tells me quite a bit. And again, that's part of the we keep costs down by
Right.
not designing anything, not submitting to the USGA, whatever it happens to be. But
Yeah.
man, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not cool. Not cool.
Last quick segment, Tony. What time is it?
Mailbag.
Mailbag. So I perused the interwebs,
Oh God, nothing good comes from
checked
that.
out the chat GPTs. Oh yeah. Threw in some prompts. Got some great things.
Oh,
I consulted my notes, and pulled together a couple different questions. But basically, being, I know we're not maxed out on driver performance and those things, but the
well, we
gains.
might be as of
Well, yeah,
tomorrow.
we'll see. Yeah,
By the
marginal.
time this posts, the USGA will have made a major announcement, which we think is going to involve some sort of rollback. So we may have an episode.
Stay
before
tuned.
this. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
What's the opposite
Or
of foreshadow? It's
pre-tuned.
like past shadow. I don't
Past
know.
shadowing? I don't
Yeah.
know. But where is the number one place you're going to look for a performance boost, or a consumer should, if it's not hard goods? So I'm talking not wedges, grips, this, that stuff. We're hearing other companies talk about, hey, I mean, can you imagine the benefit of having like, a pair of boxers that is sufficiently cooling and just wonderfully comfortable, and that makes, they say, hey, you're 1.3% more efficient on your back nine because whatever it is. Like, where's the first place you think golfers should actually look for a performance benefit that isn't equipment?
I want to say BOA so badly, but because laces are for suckers.
Now they are.
But no, I think you kind of hinted at it, but so much of it is, I think, going to be weight savings. And we've seen Ping talk about, what can they do to, loosely, let's call it back nine performance, right? Where the point in the round where you start to get fatigued,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to kind of push that point deeper and deeper and deeper into the round? And they're doing a lot of stuff like, hey, if I can shave some weight out of a club, and you're, over the course of 18 holes, you're fundamentally swinging less weight, that's going to have cause less fatigue. You'll be
but what if I
fresher.
take all the clubs out? You can't.
Well, yeah. So, but that's what I was getting at. So they
Okay.
talk about weight, and so whether that's like, I don't know. I think golfers have talked about lighter shoes. Some people have mentioned how heavy their shoes feel. So if you can take weight out of shoes, which we've seen you can do, so that maybe that's it. Weight out of your shorts, weight out of your shirt. I don't know. Like lighter weight hats. I don't know where it ends, but yeah, I think weight is where you're going to look, and it's all right. Let's get rain gear that's super water repellent, water resistant, but also is really flexible and doesn't weigh anything. And yeah, I know there's more than a few people watching this who are like, rain. I'm not going to play in that.
I'm not playing in the rain, so it doesn't help me. Yeah.
So I think electric push carts, right? Let's reduce the fatigue that comes from pushing. So I think it's seemingly silly little things like that, but if the rule is it can't be the club, I think that's probably what you have to look at. Well, you got something better?
I don't know that I do. I'd love to hear comments on this one, like because you do hear like, hey, what percentage of golfers use the wrong size glove, like are wearing an ill-fitting glove? You say, geez, if you wore the right size glove, would you have less grip tension? Would you be able to grip the club appropriately, which may lead to better swing mechanics? I don't know. A pair of shoes. We hear this from like Squares, right? We hear other. Can we talk about clear performance benefits? So BOA, I know you love to hop on the BOA train, but they have a whole performance fit lab where they study this stuff. Can you make movements more efficient over time based on how your shoes are laced? I actually think it's the shoes. I think that ground connection, force, stability, weight, getting that piece dialed in, I think it's shoes. I think that's where if you're 100% dialed in every other part of your bag, every other part of your game, the next place you should look to optimize would be footwear.
Well, and we do see, and it's interesting because fundamentally there's some new materials and things like that, but shoes haven't changed that much, right? The spikes are variations on soft spikes, but minimally different from what I can tell. So, with the exception of Squares, that's our angle, right? We have fundamentally changed the shape of the shoe. And
right.
All right, that one sounds a little weird to me. I'm going to level with you. I'm not all in on square-toed shoes, especially because I've yet to see one with BOA. But at least it's like, all right, this is weird. And other than Nick Faldo, I'm not sure anybody is completely buying into this.
Sepp Straka.
Okay. All right, well, if you've got Nick and Sepp, I guess. But I said that one's a weird one, but at least it's fundamentally different on some level than every other golf shoe out there. So yeah, maybe it's the shoes. I don't know.
We'll see. Maybe and maybe you people out there have better answers than we do. I bet you do. Like, what's the next? So. I hope so. Where?
Well,
I mean, you might be able to find another 2 miles an hour, mile an hour, half a mile an hour of swing speed with
better underwear.
I don't know, better underwear. Correct. A different type of technology in your golf shirt, Tony, or maybe your hat, or maybe an umbrella with a rain gutter.
There you go.
Something. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But yes, you may hear from us again sooner rather than later. We're expecting some golf ball announcement kind of things. So by the time this comes out, you may have already heard from us. We shall see. But as always, post your comments below. Let us know what's going on. GolfSpy T, GolfSpy C, find us. Follow us on the interwebs. And until then, we out.